safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. That the use, values, and enjoyment of our property in the neighborhood used for purpose already permitted shall be in no foreseeable manner impaired or diminished by the establishment, maintenance, or operation of this conditional use. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal or orderly development in the impairment of the surrounding property for use permitted in the district. So my task was to do the math. So I had the document from Pete, our chairman, to go back and see who all attended. So I kind of logged that out. I got the addresses. I made some contacts. I also did a little other research of people that had owned several acres of parcels that were farmers. I also had some very lifetime members go a mile, maybe a 2-mile radius around the site of infants, children, elderly, people that were above 65, and maybe some people that were had their health impaired already. I think that's very, very important that we know the structure of our community. And then I further had investigation of the census of the church, the census of Nasonville School, the daycare, and also the employment at Nasonville Dairy. So I was in charge of public health and safety. So the security of the facility, I thought I need to look into. Because at Maryland, when we visited that, it was fenced, but the campers had access to the water, which would have access to the fracking thing. So I don't know what they're going to do around the structure of that whole thing, because if you're talking about wildlife, children, adults, hikers, bikers, how accessible are they going to be in there? Another thing I want to research a little bit more is if they have security, which means a security system, video taping, and I didn't get into that in Maryland, but I'm going to look into that. I want to know if there is somebody, and I've heard some worker is going to be stationed on the site and is going to be living there for the next so many years. I want to make sure that, is he going to be the caretaker of that property? Is he going to be making walking visits and make sure everything's secure? And are they going to notify the Wood County Sheriff if there is a problem? So I need to investigate all this. So there's a lot of entities that I'm looking into as security, okay, for our public health. Then I went into roadways, and I guess roadways, because we have 4 seasons here, I'm looking into a lot of different things. They say they're going to have a landing outside before they get to that roadway. Are they going to be in charge of clearing debris, sand, water? Because it is going to be a water site. Are they going to be putting up some kind of flashing lights or limiting the miles that is going to go through that site? And then are they also limiting the miles from the frac site through Nasonville Dairy? Because you know how that goes. It's that. And I think especially with children and a lot of traffic involved, we need to look into that.
You're talking specifically about speed limit?
Speed limit,
Yeah.
yeah. And if we can change that speed limit. Are we gonna put a double line for no passing? Are the ditches and the aesthetics of the place gonna be kept up by a professional, cosmetically? I wanna make sure that they hire somebody that every time we go past that, you know how things can get overgrown. Our ditches are always overgrown, but I wanna make sure the ditch height is good, that aesthetically they're trimming, they're maintaining that area. And then I had hours of operation. Well, you know, we called the Wood County, and trucks can run whenever. So I guess we will need to come together as a group and as a township and residents of what we want if this does go through. And so I suggested 6 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 6 to 12 on Saturdays, absolutely no life on the facility on Sundays or holidays. Avoid all bus times and routes,
School bus.
school bus times and routes, and avoid preschool and daycare half-day dismissal. And then I came into air quality, where I think I have a connection with. So I did a lot of research through this, and I talked to Dr. Crispin Pierce. He's a UW Eau Claire professor. He's involved in education, academics, and science. And they have a research group that went out to Bloomer and to New Auburn, and they monitored air quality with their monitors. What they found is shocking, but the air quality of the particles, that can go into your esophagus, you can breathe, are PM10s. What gets really down into your lungs, into the little alveoli, and has you cause a lot of coughing and probably long-term effects, are PM 2.5. They found both at both of those sites. I went into their research. I'm not going to really get into what their findings were, but it wasn't good. So I'd like to do a little bit more prodding and prodding if this comes to this. Maybe we need a group like them to come and monitor and have it be an educational and a research part, because when you look at all this that's being said, there's not a lot researched and stated as fact for the state of Wisconsin. And our life is a little bit different here than Minnesota. Do we have the same climates? Pretty much. But I think if we're going to have this, then we need to have some kind of a research, educational part that somebody has documentation that this is happening, and long-term effects on our residents. Would I love to put like stern restrictions on years about? I don't know if we can, but I would like to suggest that. So that's where my study of infants, children, people over 65, the elderly, and people with existing heart and lung disease came into effect. So I'm looking into that. So,
Okay, just to interrupt, but you're doing that because that sector of our society is more susceptible to these types of...
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
and sand fracking is silicosis dust, or silicosis. It is known to produce silica dust that causes silicosis. And there's a lot of documentation, but there's really no fact from a sand frac that has produced that in a resident years away. Does it, they say that it could cause it 4 to 10 years down the road. Well, what's the research out there? So I would like that maybe as a study, and maybe Eau Claire would help us out that way. And I would propose that Cooley Frac pay for that research.
And just a little note on that, I was involved in Montana with some, they call it citizen science, where community members, there's a lot of extraction industry in Montana, mining, logging, things like that. And so they did form groups of citizen science. So just to put it out there, little bug in your ear, if this does come about and you do want to help with some monitoring, I'm sure, there's entities out there, us or different groups that set that up.
So then I want to say one more thing. So my task was public health, safety, and general welfare. That's right in our zoning ordinance.
Okay, I'll turn over to Mr. Ott.
My assignment was hours operation, screening, visual, and sound preservation of natural beauty and wildlife township. And their proposal for running was 22 hours of 3 trucks. And I think we should make a proposal if this goes through. It should be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and not run during school bus hours. And then 6 to 9 during the non-school year. And let them use 6 trucks, because they got to haul 10 million ton out of here, so want to get them in and out. In Washington, their proposal was 24 hours till November. I think we should tell them leave them around that long, but the noise over berms can't be over 80 decibels. I think it was 90. And I don't know, is this one going to have a crusher? Did it have a crusher at Maryland?
Yeah.
Yeah, the crusher in there.
Yep.
So it was running at the time.
That was a very good setup.
We can't hear.
Yep. Yes, they are going to have a crusher at this plant, to my understanding, according to the plan. They're going to have to process the plant. They're going to have to make the large debris smaller, clearly into the silica sand or the frac sand itself.
But it was really quiet down in Maryland, so it shouldn't be any louder here.
But we did not, just to be fair, when we were in Maryland, the only thing running was that processing unit, that actual facility or the actual unit itself. That was actually doing the washing and crushing of the sand. We didn't hear any trucks or backhoes and that type of thing. Go ahead.
And the screening, I think they should add some feet on the southwest side, because they're cut it short. And you'll still be able to see it when you're going north. And the berm maintenance, they have nothing in there about berm maintenance. I think they should be able to have to cut that once a month. And the wildlife, well, when they start mining, wildlife will disappear. So, and hopefully it comes back.
It'll be a lake, so they'll be displaced.
Right.
Others may come.
And when they plant back the native prairie grasses, when they bring it back,
Okay,
that's all I got.
all right. Mr. Bensky?
Okay, I was supposed to check into lighting, amount of lighting. I'm not sure how much light they will be putting out, but they do have to put enough light out if they're gonna be operating in the hours of darkness, that I have not been able to find out, at this point, if there's, any requirement from the state or federal as to how much lighting we actually need on the pit area. The other thing was the truck traffic, and at this point, the truck traffic is going to be coming out onto Highway V and going to 10, and then 10 into Marshfield. My big question is where are they going to access V? Is it going to be at the top of the hill? Is it going to be halfway down? It can't be on the bottom of the hill because that's wetland area there. They cannot go to the wetland area.
I think they got a fire number there where the driveway's gonna be.
And they got a number up there now. I didn't see it myself, but
It's an old one. That's, it's right up
but that's
Frank's.
right on top of the hill.
It's right up Frank's. Over some fence line. It's an old fire number.
If you can't hear, we're talking about the driveway entrance to the site itself. It sounds like it's going to be about, if you're familiar with the property, where the Francine property ends and the Helgerson property begins. Right on County Trunk V, on the west side of the property, on V.
On the east side.
West
Well,
side of the property.
West side
Of the property.
yeah.
Yep.
East side of B.
Yep.
The other thing, which I have a great concern about, is what benefits to the town of Rock are we going to, monetary benefits to the town of Rock. Now, we were down in Maryland, I had heard a figure of, that they were going to be paying Wood County 5 cents a ton, what they took out. I asked the gentleman down there if that was true. He said, yes, it was. I said, what does the town of Rock get then? And he said the same amount. Now, to be truthful, when we came up here and had the meeting before last, Jim asked the gentleman from Cargill, is there going to be any payment as far as the tonnage goes? And the gentleman said no. So we've got a conflicting thing going there. As far as tax valuation, that is, I talked with Jerry Wagner, our assessor, and he said, well, he says, I'll know more in November when we have our assessor training. I said, we don't have it until November. I said, we gotta have it right now. And that was on last Monday, when we had a meeting on Tuesday. He called me back on Tuesday and said that he talked with the state assessor in Wausau office. And this assessor does the assessing of the Marshall's facilities there. And he said that the state will be doing the assessing of the machinery and the operating machinery and any structures that go onto the land. Cargill has said that if need be, they would build a structure around their plant. The taxation for the land would be done by the local assessor with guidance from the state. He estimated at this point in time that the valuation on that property would go up to somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000 an acre valuation. it would be collected by the state, and then the same percentage that comes back on all of our taxes from the state will be applied to that, and it will come back to the town in one lump sum. They estimate that we would get somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 a year off of that property to put it right from the front. How much is accurate, I can't tell you. I don't think anything that we come up here with is 100% accurate. You can find a figure that will substantiate anything you wanna say or do for or against if you look long enough and hard enough. I think we need to, I appreciate all of the work that the other committee members have done, and as far as the site position, the site effects, the effects on the wildlife, some of the things that I'm interested in, or what I want to see is how much does the town of Rock get off of this? And I mean, if we're not getting anything, well, what good is it to us as taxpayers? I mean, as a taxpayer, I think that we should be getting some monetary value out of it. So that's basically about where I stand right now, and what I found out.
Thank you. And just to kind of set an expectation here, or identify what parameters this committee is going to function as, and we heard a lot of, I suggest this and I propose this. This is based upon the committee members' individual and collective research that they've done. This isn't just our pulling something, a recommendation out. We have the town of Bloomer, the town of Alma, the town of Green Valley, am I saying? Garden Valley. We have some examples from which to draft these recommendations that are specific to the different concerns within our community. And we're going to do that. And again, some of the parameters that we're going to follow is that number one, or the things that we're going to apply to is number one, we need information to make an informed decision. Number two, we're going to trust what we see and or read, but we're going to try to verify the best we can. The challenge to that is we don't have a lot of time. We have another week for this committee to make recommendations, and that's with the final deadline of the 17th of September to make those recommendations. I know there have been a lot of people at this table and sitting out in the audience and not even here tonight that have conducted a lot of research as well. They have been emailing a lot of people back and forth different things. So again, you hear this is my opinion or this is what I want. This isn't really individual. These are individuals tasked with that right now. But one of the reasons why we don't have recommendations up there, and these are only drafts, is for that specific reason. We want to make sure we have data to support it. We want to make sure we have some examples when possible to support it as well. So the things actually haven't had much time to work on, to be honest. I've probably been the most remiss, one of the most remiss on the committee. The Cooley frac sand solvency, that's certainly something that I need to look into yet. I've actually talked to a few people about the frac sand industry, where it's going. It's my understanding that there's a significant push in the state of Texas right now to have their own frac sand mines, so they don't have to ship it from the Midwest. That's just one of the research that I've come across in that regard. All of the things like that certainly speak to the solvency, or the potential solvency of the industry in the Midwest, and not only Wisconsin, but Minnesota. There's in the Midwest in general. And then no apparent local short and long-term plan to address future requests for frac sand mining. That will probably be one of the last recommendations this committee comes up with, to not only address this particular conditional use permit, to either accept or deny, but also how are we as a town going to address future conditional use permits. As I said in the first meeting, if we think this is the last that we're going to see in our township, we are mistaken, in my opinion. And we certainly, as me individually and as a committee, will not begrudge anyone the opportunity to sell their property to the frac sand industry. Anyone in the frac sand industry, that's certainly an individual right and opportunity to do so. But we all have to understand, in my opinion now, I'm preaching a bit, I apologize, but based on the research, there is clearly members of our community that are paying a higher price for that profit. And we need to make sure that we have certain parameters and requirements in place that really help those who are going to be affected most directly. And if you may not be living around this mine, but there certainly is a resource underneath us that future requests will, in my opinion, undoubtedly be coming in the very near future. I've heard rumors, like all of you have probably heard as well, on who might be doing this and that type of thing. So, but anyways, just to kind of point out our expectation and the way we're going to conduct ourselves as a committee. And that's, again, that's one of the reasons we don't have a lot of recommendations on the screen like I hope tonight, is that there is still a lot more research. It's not the format that I think it needs to be as the committee chair. So, any other discussion from the committee? And we'll get to the public in just a moment. Any other discussion from the committee about anything you heard, any concerns, comments that you may have about the information and work that's been thus far?
I think you brought up kind of an interesting point just now, is that how long is this frac mining going to go on? Is it going to go to 10 to 15 years? What if it only goes 10 years? Then what happens to the property? I think that's something that needs to be investigated. As far as there was a comment on the mine down in Maryland, when we were down there. They were using a dredge down there to dredge the sand out. It was not running when we were there. But the thing that kind of impressed me was that they are doing reclamation of this property as they go. They are taking, their intentions are to take 5 acres at a time off of this property in the town of Rock. And as they take one out, they start the next one, they reclaim the first one. Now down there at Maryland, I have to differ with, I think Liz said something about a fence. Okay, I'm sorry. They had, we were standing on one side of the lake where the machinery, the sand washers and that equipment was. On the other side of the lake, and I don't know how far along they were with this property as far as I know they're getting near completion, but I don't know how far along. But on the other side of the lake, it was lined up with campers all the way around. Now, the coulee frac sand, they did have a fence between the campers and the lake. This lake is at I see Katie shaking her head, there was an orange fence up there. Anyway, they shaped the bottom as they reclaimed this. They put a real gradual slope on the bank. They have a swimming area, a wading area for little kids that's in sand, and they do not have a big drop off like you have in some of these other lakes here in this county. So I mean, there's a few other things, but that's my main thing is I think we need to find out how we can get the monetary value to the township to relieve the cost of the blacktop roads. The other night, at one of the first meetings, Pete, the town chairman, said that we would be able to get blacktop roads. How, I don't know. And I haven't talked to Pete to question him on that. But I will do that tomorrow night or the day before the
Thursday night.
yeah, okay, Thursday night. So, I mean, that's my comment.
One thing regarding the camping area, I think it's been pointed out at some meetings in the past, and we So nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but it's not exactly peaceful, scenic camping. It's people that don't really care what's in the water or soil, people that don't really care, or you know,
We can't-
generally speaking.
We can't say that.
Generally speaking,
I
they're
think-
going for ATVing, and so, you know,
I think that's a moot point because Clark County and Jackson County and that area of the state is known for its ATV trails.
right?
And if you go to,
So it's not really comparable to our,
right, I mean, you go to Mead Lake or you go to Snyder Park, there's tons of ATVers in there every weekend.
is that what we want for our area, or?
Yeah, if they're gonna run the
Yeah.
road.
I'm not saying that ATVs are, you know, come on, bring your ATVs, tear up the country. No. I'm saying that if you have a 170-acre lake that's approximately 11 to 14 feet deep, maybe, at the deepest spots, you're gonna have fish in there. There's gonna be a chance to get, from the DNR will probably help stock this lake, to get fish started in there. They did that down at Sherwood Lake. Sherwood Lake has no ATV trails into it. You go down there on the weekend, and it's full of campers, and tents, and campers. And the people are sitting around and having a good time, enjoying what's there.
Sure.
And I
Devil's advocate on the water, according to the DNR, heavy metal contaminants are still an unknown from frac sand mining. So we will not know until possibly years down the line, until possibly the potential of an increase of lead or mercury or manganese or any heavy metals that cause adverse health effects, especially in children, are known. So that's, again, one of those,
Well,
wish we would have known that.
I don't want to debate, I don't want a public debate. I asked for discussion specific to the recommendations that have been made. If there's a comment from anybody that we need to maybe look in a different direction or temper or adjust our recommendations, I think that's appropriate. I will say in regards to Mr. Vensky's comments about we need to do this or someone needs to look into it, the someone is this committee and specifically you. You know, so the idea is to look at the economics, because I know there's this, you know, the view and the first presentation that was made to the public was this Lindsay recreational area. And I don't remember, I've only been in the township for 5 years, I apologize for that, but I don't remember anybody pushing for a recreational area in the town of, in the town of Rock. That being said, there's also an intent by Cooley Frac Sand, it seems to be a desire by the board, the town board, to have this property deeded back over to the town of Rock
No way,
with the, I'm sorry?
no way to do that.
Well, okay, so but that's the discussion currently. That's the discussion currently, and my point, I'll get to in just a moment, the point of that is that you just mentioned that there's going to be taxes of anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year that be coming to the town of Rock. Once they deed it back to us, that's gone forever. And then, you know, so those are all, and I just make that point because those are the types of things that we need to look at this economically. Not only just how much are we going to get for the town of Rock in tonnage, how long is that going to be sustained, and what are the costs associated with that short-term economic benefit?
Do we
That's how we.
know how many taxes we will have to pay on that land if it is deeded back to us?
Well, well, I don't know what
The pay taxes on their own land.
yeah, exactly. So zero. We go from $10,000 to $15,000 every year potentially to nothing for the rest of whatever. And then there's liabilities. I mean, we haven't even talked
How much
about
would the town of Rock have to pay in property taxes?
nothing. You're a municipal agency. You don't tax yourself. Yeah, it's town property.
The income, what would come after was established as a recreational area would be coming in from your campers, primarily. And if you think about it, I'm just going off the top of my head, I haven't been camping for years. What do they pay for a campsite? $5 to $10 a site? If you got $5 a site for campers, and you've got 75 sites in there, you know, for 3 nights. Filled up, put it up, and there you go.
Just to be fair, we don't know what it's going to be used for. They talked about a duck pond or the hunting area. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. But you can certainly put that in your economic cost comparison analysis to figure out what it's going to mean to the town. So, Kay has a comment.
I just want to say one thing. If you haven't seen a frac site or going to Winona.
This is a discussion for
I know,
the table.
but
So.
just go out and do some research and look, okay? And then you can get a better understanding on how close the campers were together and that kind of thing.
Okay, the committee has provided some updates on where they're at as a committee, some of the recommendations, some more specific than others, but there are certainly a number of recommendations that we will try to address every one of the 14 concerns that were identified in the town. So with that, I would like to open up to public comments with the caveat. I was accused of not running an orderly meeting last time, so I'm going to be super orderly. I'm going to ask you that when you stand up, you state your name, you state your address. We respect everybody's opinion, and if it's not respectful, I will gavel you down. That's just the way we have to do it apparently. So I recognize a gentleman, his hand up in the air. Sir, hand.
Yeah, Doug Kessner, 9363 Conroe Beach. I think this cover up for this park and stuff, when they move out, they should pay money for taxes that they took from the town of Rock. They should put that back into every pay so much. When they pull and say they're going to give us this big park, that's going to cost us all money. And we all pay enough tax to the town of Rock already. So I think they pay us some money for how many years, I don't know how many years it's going to be, but whatever, so they got to pay.
Yeah, to be fair, they did, my understanding, they're proposing, I don't know if it's unofficial or if there's been some discussion, my understanding that there may be an opportunity, I believe the board chairman identified that there may be a fund that they would contribute to for the operation and maintenance of this pond or this lake. Anywhere from, I think it's 170, but that's total acres between the Helgerson, the Francine, and the Cooley Frax, or the Carvel Ceramics property. That's 170 acres total. It's not all going to be a lake. Certainly there's a different, but good point, sir.
So they'll pay tax when they move out, they'll be compensating the town of Rock.
My understanding, there's been some discussion about putting a fund together to help with the maintenance and care of the lake after they reclaim it. The details of which there's nothing in writing, it's simply a kind of a verbal description by the Cooley Fraxat, as far as I know, unless there's a couple commission members back there. There's something.
I think that's a pretty accurate statement, Jim. Is what has been offered anyway, was that they would actually have a company come out of Minnesota which specializes in setting up these post-mining environments that would lead to like a lake with lakefront with a park, and then there would be a fund that they would actually start up, and it sounds like it could last, according to them, indefinitely. I don't know how that's possible myself, but it's maybe a perpetual fund that would maintain the lake, park, whatever you want to call it, the atmosphere that they leave behind.
As long as they remain solvent,
Right.
and it's a bonded fund, so it stays there like it identifies.
If they file bankruptcy, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, we have a frac sand mine-ish. I guess there's some debate whether it's a barrel pit, because it certainly is not a sand processing plant. There was a plant in the town of Rock that our understanding is in bankruptcy right now.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Gentleman right here.
My name is Nate Carter. I live on Fairhaven Road, 9502 Fairhaven. A suggestion and a question. So one of you ladies mentioned the idea of a research process where they would measure the air quality. And they would measure the air quality as the mine is in existence. My suggestion would be to have the air quality measured prior to the mine even going in, so that they can see that this is actually a result, of the mine itself. And then for you in the back there, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Okay,
Okay, you had suggested that we go and visit other frac sand mines, and so, you know, I can imagine myself going and visiting another mine and, you know, getting really upset about, you know, what it does to the area and what it looks like and things like that. But aside from getting me mad, what can we do then about it if we've gone and seen these mines? What's our opportunity for action here?
Yeah, there are several opportunities, and for those of you who may attend other meetings and have a lot of information, there is opportunities within our zoning ordinance, and specifically within the conditional use permit parameters, to put additional requirements on the individuals asking or requesting for this opportunity. Because, and I can't really get into, I got my slides up there, but there's opportunity to make all of the requirements and more, so much more than what we just talked about tonight. And specifically, if you can provide visual barriers, you can require that. You can, you know, there are so many different things. The visual barriers, the hours of operation, you know, the light pollution, that make sure the lights are pointing down. There's certainly that aspect that can be pointed out as well. I'm trying to just off the top of my head identify some of the things that can be done to minimize the view of these types of operations. But the part that we're really concerned about in the community that's been expressed thus far is the fact that there's so much more than what we can see. Specifically, what's going on down here, specifically the silica dust that you can't see, what's going on down below, you know, our water, you know, is our water being contaminated? It's my understanding from going through this 451-page report in depth in a week and a half, that there's a lot of information in there, and it's my understanding, and actually talking to the gentleman, I think Mr. Wallace identified that there's a company out of Madison, no, Minneapolis actually, Minneapolis area, Mr. John Sandstone. I actually talked with him, and Kay's husband talked to him as well. He identified that one of the primary reasons he was on the property that day a couple weeks ago, and they actually, if you drove around the property, you see these yellow casts, yellow devices, wells basically, in the ground, and he said those were specifically for the reclamation process, at least in part, and for the reclamation of this lake, and to make sure we have the water, and to monitor whether they are having any effect on the water quality or quantity in the area. And for me, personally, the red flag comes up where how can they do things that are talking about reclamation when the conditional use permit hasn't even been approved yet? And that's just me thinking outside, but I see a hand back there. I'll recognize Mr. Wallace, zoning commissioner.
In answer to your question, they have to have a reclamation permit before they can continue with anything else. They have to have an accepted reclamation plan ahead of everything else.
And I'm fairly certain that plan includes the installation of those wells.
Correct.
Art and horse scenario, just from my perspective.
Correct.
Any other comments, sir? Let me, gentlemen, did we answer that question?
Thank you.
All right. Jeff?
Jeff Minders, 1045-7 Patton Drive.
Come on, chief. We're going for the call.
It's somewhere down that way. I've been there for 26 years. It's like knowing your own phone number. My question is to the board, is anybody question the county board about whether they would support or deny any part of this conditional use permit?
There have been a number of conversations. I'll turn it over to you in just a moment. We've gotten some guidance from the land conservationists for the county, but have we asked them whether they would deny it? I don't know if that's within our purview as a committee, certainly.
You know, they're going to take what theirs, but I mean, the county board, as a board saying, hey, we're not giving up this 5 cents a ton. I don't care what the town of Rock thinks.
Yeah, I mean, that you're talking about, again, that's one of the reasons why our first recommendation was to get a lawyer, because we didn't have one, still don't have one about this issue today. So there's a lot more questions. That's a great question. I will speak to, okay, there was talk about the county has this authority, can they deny it? And the state of Wisconsin DNR has this statutory responsibility. I can tell you as of last week, Thursday, I think it is, I received an email because I questioned when the presentation was made by the county land conservationist, the county highway commissioner, the state DNR, and the Sandstone, Mr. John Sandstone, the hydrogeologist working for Cooley Frac Sand. There was a presentation made by them. The individual from the DNR was asked whether we have all of the permits that are needed to approve a plan from Cooley Frac Sand, and she reinforced it in writing recently that they have not either received and or approved all of the necessary applications for approval of this plan. Again, from my perspective, cart and horse scenario. Sorry, David.
Now, there was a question about the zoning with Wood County, and one of the things that I didn't realize was that Wood County does not have any zoning ordinance on its own. All the zoning, the Wood County Board has turned all the zoning over to the townships and are letting the townships do the coming up with their zoning individually. And then they do go over them and double check them to make that, you know, that we're consistent with our neighboring townships and so on and so forth. But as a county, the county is not zoned like the township is.
Sir.
Dan Benke, 8642 Collingwood V. I'm concerned because it seems like we're being so rushed to approve this. Harbo's been working on this for 5 years. Their drilling was in 2013. And we're supposed to approve or have this ready in 60 days. The Wisconsin Towns Association, that our chairman seems to like a lot, has on its website a sample moratorium ordinance prepared by the attorney of the Wisconsin Towns Association that says that the town board has town boards have authority to require a moratorium so they can study the problem and study the process and study the effects of what's going on. Has any thought been given to Rock Township establishing a moratorium for 6 months or a year so that we can figure out if this is actually something we want?
There have been a number of conversations very specific to that point. And the information we've been provided by the town board, specifically the town chair, has said that our task is to address this conditional use permit. If we, and I think there's an opportunity to perhaps go above and beyond that, I think as a committee, but our task is, and our purpose was clearly stated a few times. But your moratorium scenario is what we were told is that any moratorium would not apply to an existing conditional use permit that's currently being considered. So could we do that, or could the town board do something like that in the future? It appears that they could. Could they do something specifically, a moratorium that affect this conditional use permit? We've been told that it cannot. And that's a great question for the attorney. And one more point about that, one of the first things that we asked for in regards to getting, in our recommendation, number one, the first thing as read in our meeting minutes, it says to determine the legal opportunities to extend the timeline for a ruling on the conditional use permit. I asked informally Mr. Doug Schmidt from Cooley Frac Sand the night of the Maryland tour, because of the information that we need to go through, because of the research that needs to be done to make an informed decision, would they voluntarily extend the 60-day requirement to review a conditional use permit? Repeatedly, we have been told that we can't alter our own requirement. We've been told that by the town chairman, and I don't know, and we were told that, and you can watch the videotape, that subject came up again, but the reasonable side of me says, if we think it's okay, and they agreed to it, is there an opportunity to amend it? Again, that's another great question for the attorney, if we have time to do so. We need to submit our recommendations, many, all of them, and there are many, by next week, Monday. Any other comments, concerns, ma'am?
I have a few. First of all, Kathy stuck Catherine Banky. I live at 8642 County Road B.
Thank you.
I found online a list of the current sites for frac sanding in Wisconsin. It said there are 128 facilities, 92 of them are active, 32 of them are inactive, so a third of them, and 4 have been reclaimed. To me, that points to the fact that we don't have enough data to know what's going to happen with this down the road, 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
For me, that's a good reason not to give the conditional use permit, because we don't know the answers to the question about whether it's going to affect public health, if it's going to affect property values, if it's going to affect wells. We don't know. So we can't say, okay, go ahead and do it. The second thing is the article that you referenced this morning on the news about the relocation of the access of sand in Texas as opposed to Wisconsin. To me, says that we may be in another slump where we may have a mine that may start and then become one of the inactive mines. So what is the outcome of that for our community if our mine goes bankrupt, or if they just stop producing because there's no use for it? Where does that leave us? And the third thing was the families in it's not Taylor County, but it's that sued to have and lost.
Chippewa?
It
Chippewa
was-
County?
No, anyway, I didn't bring it with me. The reason they lost their suit wasn't because they didn't have a good reason, that it was the use of a neighbor's property can't impact my property. It's just that they didn't have enough data to show how it negatively impacted them. So if we walk into this without the data, we get a sand mine that's has invested hundreds of millions of dollars. Our chances of stopping that steamroller are zero. This is the time when we can stop them. This is the time. We have at least 60 to 100 people who live within a mile of the intersection there who are going to be impacted by this. This is the time to stop it, not after the permit has been given.
If I can recall all the points you made in comment, we, members of this committee, have spoken with informally the lawyer who successfully defended all the way, it's my understanding, to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, the opportunity for a community to deny a conditional use permit, or I should have it in front of me, and I apologize if I don't. Pardon me? Okay, yeah. But anyways, there is a case law that was prior to 2017 that identified successfully how a community can say, no, frac sand mining is not something that we want in our community. However, because of that, in large part, that Wisconsin Supreme Court ruling, Act 67 was enacted in 2017. That basically says exactly what you said, that you need a whole lot more information other than the quality of life and things that are perhaps a bit more subjective about it. Yes, it was in Trempealeau County, Wisconsin Supreme Court in May of 2017. This is the article date. Anyways, it is the attorney that I speak of is Mr. Ron Stadler. I believe he's out of Eau Claire, if I'm not mistaken. Milwaukee, excuse me. He was the attorney for the Trempealeau County. Basically, the Wisconsin Supreme Court has upheld Trempealeau County's rejection of a frac sand mine proposal in a case that had potential to change zoning laws statewide. And again, it goes on, and I think it was in 2013, it looks like, that this ruling was made. Then we have Wisconsin Act 67, which has very specific parameters in which you need to apply if you're going to deny a conditional use permit. And it appears from those of us who have seen the document and researched it, that it's more difficult today than it was in 2013 to do exactly as you suggest.
Well, this case I was referencing was settled in August of 2018, was just settled.
Yeah, I just
And-
received
and-
that.
And they did not win, but the reason they did not win was because they didn't make a good enough case, not because the reasoning for it was wrong, it's just that they didn't defend their case
Yes.
adequately.
Yes, I just saw it today. I just was given that particular study. Like I said, we could spend a year researching this, but right now, we have enough research to make an informed decision and recommendations to the planning commission and or the town board. And your point about the Texas, doing more frac sand mining themselves, we made that point together. But your second point, I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on.
I listed the mines that were active and inactive,
Yep.
reclaimed in the
yeah.
state.
Yep, and to be fair, well, to provide data that's related to that, the county has a fund, what's it, 1.6 million? Anybody know? It's a number I remember, Tracy, from the Wood County, I think it's about 1.6 million, that they have in a fund to reclaim sites where, if it's Harry, correct me, I'm probably going down, or whether it's either in bankruptcy, there's a fund available, either if it's not bonded by the company itself that goes bankrupt, there's money available from the county to reclaim those sites, perhaps not back to the reclamation plan, but to do some type of reclamation.
I'm not familiar with that, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll check
based on
into
the
that.
conversation we had with the land conservation person for Wood County. Jeff, you had a question.
I believe they're correct on that, because I believe they're using that money, or they're trying to get the bonded money to take care of the frac sand that in the southeast corner there that did go under bankrupt, because they're going to have to reclaim that one, and that's where the money's coming from. But there was a bond there, and it has to go through court to get it.
Okay.
And my other question or answer was, I believe she's talking about the town of Hixton. Residents sued their in-laws just recently. That was just published. I gave you that copy of that, and I believe that's Jackson County.
That was a nuisance complaint.
Yeah, because that's the only way they could fight it.
Yeah, there are a number of things within our current zoning ordinance that needs to be addressed by an attorney. There are specific requirements in there, specific notations in there that says if this exists and it affects this, or this, you can't approve it. And if there's an opportunity, if the land in question is in for example, a secondary conservation area, I think that's the way it's identified. There's also specific requirements what you can and can't do there as well. I don't know to the extent, our zoning ordinance is a fairly straightforward, but also a bit complicated. There's an opportunity for interpretation by both sides of an argument. Again, that's why we recommended to get a lawyer. But I'll leave it at that. Any other questions, comments, sir?
Well, what are we going to do, or what are our options if you recommend that a lawyer is hired to protect the town of Rock and the town board says no? Because I don't understand why, but it seems to me from going to those meetings that the town board is all gung-ho for this. And they don't really see our concerns as being valid.
Well, what we're trying to do is to make sure we have attendance of, because early on in this process, it was crystal clear to us that we were supposed to make decisions based upon the whole township and not just that immediate area around it, which from my perspective, who is it going to affect more than those individuals? But we understand that. So that's why we've got the board out there, to identify this large geographical area within the township and the large number of residents in the township that have concerns about this conditional use permit and allowing this to occur in the town of Rock. So, and your other question and point, what can we do? I don't know.
Well,
There's some things that other communities have
certainly a group
done.
of citizens can hire a lawyer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would guess I would encourage you to express your opinion to your Town of Rock board members and, sorry, Harry and Jeff, and to your planning commission members as well. Their numbers in the book, I think their emails in the, an email to contact them is in the, you know, in the town.
On the website.
Town website. By all means, I don't know if anybody's, you know, from what I've been told, it's a Schmidt thing. What I was told is that there are a lot of people who are in favor of this, because the overwhelming majority of people that we've heard comments from publicly have real concerns, and if you had to ask them, they may not be in favor of this. But I've been told recently that there are a lot of people in favor of this who are unwilling to speak up publicly. So we need representation from both sides of this issue. We are maintaining a very objective viewpoint of this process. But it's becoming fairly clear to a lot of people in the township the way this may need to go. Dave, you got a comment?
I would just like to kind of sum this up a little bit. We're talking about hiring an attorney. We're talking about fighting the case. How far, who knows, up the court system ladder. I am fully in favor of hiring an attorney to advise this committee and town board on where we stand and what we can and can't do in a legal fashion. Now, I was involved in a case when I was on the appeals committee that when the appeals committee denied the variance, the property owner took it up one step further. We went to the attorney, and the attorney said, okay, you're not going to win this one. You're just going to spend a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money, and not win the case. And I think we have to kind of use our judgment here a little bit when we talk attorneys, because attorneys don't come cheap. And they count every minute that they're on the telephone. Now, if there is something that can be done, okay, but if it's going to cost how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of our taxpayer money, who's going to pay it?
Well, if our property values drop by
Certainly.
20 to 30%, that might be a worthwhile expense.
Where are you coming up with this 20 to 30%?
Figured it was quoted at a meeting.
Wisconsin Towns Association has done the research. The research is out there. The data is out there. We just need to go after it.
Hey, David, I expect to live out here 40, 50 more years.
Good, I'm glad. I do.
Yeah,
I won't.
and to your point, you know, we made the recommendations based upon, and perhaps this is the point you were making, I apologize if I'm repeating it, but, you know, we haven't had any legal representation up to this point.
That's
We
what we need.
we needed it from day one on June 18th, when it was identified that this is coming into it. We hadn't done that. I understand, and I can certainly put myself in the position of the town board or planning commission, that they're perhaps a bit reluctant to commit to spending the tax dollars, but we made this recommendation as a committee, and the majority of us voted for it, because we understand there's a lot more questions than there are answers. And I understand what you're saying. You know, there's an opportunity for, well, I'll just leave it at that. So, I think, Harry, you were next, and then.
Hopefully this helps a little bit. You come in attendance of the meeting on Thursday night for the regular town board meeting. There will be an issue on the agenda discussing whether or not we'll get an attorney, and it looks very favorable that could happen, although I shouldn't be speaking for the town board members. Certainly is being strongly considered in a favorable light.
Harry?
Yes.
Will they, this attorney that they're gonna hire, will they let us have our recommendations, who we want?
That I do not know. I can't answer that for the board. You can make a recommendation. However, they need to be versed in this kind of situation, in the conditional use type things, and if they've got frac mining experience or mining experience, that's all the more better, you know.
I'm going to offer to be committee liaison to the legal representation and the board. I'm going to recommend, or I'm going to volunteer to participate in the conversations with the lawyers, just in case there's any questions about the recommendations we make. Since one of the things we're asking for is to make sure that the recommendations, the intent of our recommendations, are legally sound moving forward. So I'm going to go out publicly and say I will volunteer my time to be a part of that discussion, so there is representation from this committee and perhaps some of the concerns raised thus far. So
I think that's a wonderful idea.
I'm hoping that the town board agrees with.
But for,
that
you know,
thought.
just for those that are worried that the town board is going to deny an attorney, I just don't see that happening. So, you know, I believe that they will retain the services of an attorney for the purpose of protecting the township and legal matters. So,
Thank you. Gentleman up front here.
Yeah, Dave Smith, 11256 County Road N, just right down the road here. I guess I'm somewhat surprised that I have hardly seen any board members here at any of these meetings. And it seems like the discussion argument is money coming from running the mine versus everything else. Now, when we moved here in 1995, we redid the zoning in this community. It was a little bit later than that. And a survey was sent out where a lot of you probably remember, filled, you know, what kind of things do you like to see in the township? What kind of place do you want to live in? That kind of thing. And if I recall being at the meetings, 80 to 90% of the people in this township agreed across lines on what they wanted. And that's what has been in the PowerPoint presentation and in the zoning. So if 80 to 90% of the people back then believe that that's the way we want to live and that's the way we want to be, I know it's 23, 25 years later, what does the township think now? Do people still all agree? And if they do, then do we really care if we're going to get any money from a mine? I mean, because most of the people at that time agreed they want to live someplace where it's peaceful, there's wildlife, because I remember at the time a lot of people were arguing and worried that if we didn't do the zoning right, we were going to end up with these farms with 2,000 head. And that's the one thing that people didn't want to have happen because they run milk trucks round the clock and all that. And I get that that happens and that's the way we're going. But that was a concern from everybody. And it seemed like 80 to 90% of people agreed that's not the way we wanted to go. So it seems like now, though, there's this huge change that somehow it's 50-50 in the township. I don't know if it is anymore. Is it 50-50 that people want big industry and money versus living out in the country? So I guess I would just, you know, bring that up. And I guess, like I said, I'm kind of surprised that the rest of the board hasn't been at any of these meetings. I mean, I'm kind of glad that, you know, Harry's been here, and I don't know if anybody's, you know, just been here. And but
these
I mean,
are all great questions for Thursday, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, there's opportunity in a normal meeting. And to be fair to the board, last meeting we had Mr. Cranes, Mr. Miller, Mr. Woodesdorfer in attendance. This is the first night that we haven't had a board member in attendance. And he did call me or sent me a text that he had a prayer commit and he was not unable to make it. Why the other board members are not here, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, the point about express your opinion, because we're getting quite a bit of pushback that there's a lot of people that aren't willing to speak up or come to these meetings that are all for this. But again, the overwhelming comments we keep hearing are contrary to that. Sir?
Eugene Sophie, 11387 MacArthur Drive. You know, when the comment was made, you know, like you say, the people aren't wanting to come or they're for it. Let's face it, everybody in this room does not want it. I see it. I don't want it. I'm trying to envision what this thing is going to look like. You know, because right now I'm low. I look up into that field. Now you're going to take out 25 feet. You're going to have to build a berm around that the wetland side on the east side along the old Rippentrog property. You know, I just can't fathom how big that's got to be to hold that water because, your banks are gonna be very high up on the top of that hill. And as far as, we're worried about getting money from the county, or from the mine for the county at 5 cents a ton. A truck, the truck and trailer that these guys are using is probably about 35,000 pounds, so they're gonna haul 80,000 pounds gross. They're gonna get 20 to 22 ton. We're gonna get $1 to $1.10 per load. That's an awful lot of loads that they have to haul for us to get any money.
Good point.
That's all I got for, and one other thing, I work with a gentleman who lives over west of Neillsville in the town of Pine Valley. They have a quarry over there. They had no zoning. The only notice that they got is, it is coming. And the only party that had to be appeased in that operation was the DNR. The townsfolk didn't have any say in it. This gentleman says the worst part is all the truck traffic. They have a lot of dump trucks running up and down the road because he's between the quarry and Highway 10. So,
Yeah, and like I said, this committee is gonna follow a couple of different parameters. Number one is we need information to make an informed decision. If there's someone in attendance, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but if there's someone in attendance tonight that has data to support, and I know what Mr. Bensky has provided, and I've tried to also provide some potential positive outcomes of this, we want to hear it. We need to hear it right away. So again, I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but if there's somebody who does not have a vested interest in seeing this succeed and has a vested interest or an opinion that's specifically against this, we need to hear that as well. We need to hear the justification and reasons for it. Because if you look up frac sand mining and you Google search that, you are by far going to get a lot more negative things identified. And I don't know if it's a Google search engine and the way they do it, or what, use whatever search engine you want. There's a lot of information out there. There's enough information that the concerns that have been raised in this township and many other townships or villages and communities across the Midwest identified. There's enough out there, there's enough research to identify that there's certainly a pretty high level of validity to the concerns that are out there. But for every one or two you see that say this is not a good thing, there's going to be one or two that are going to say this is a good thing. But then you need to trust and verify and do your homework, identify what these studies are going for. Ma'am?
My name is Maureen Schmidt. I live at 8975 County Road V. This comment is for you. The 5 cents a ton, if you get 10 million tons in 14 years, that's $500,000. You divide that into 14 years, that's $35,000 a year that we would get in money, in revenue. That's not enough. That might not even pay for the road damage that we get. 10 to 15,000 in taxes, that's not enough. If we are looking at what this is going to do to our property when these people leave, and we have to maintain this brown lake, what is that going to be? How much is that going to be? They talked about the night that I had come when frac sand was here, that maybe they'd start like a $55,000 fund. And I got them to pressure them to talk about if our wells were damaged, how were they going to fix it if they were the ones who were in to be caused by this damaged well. Well, you would take it from this $55,000 ton. The Wisconsin, there's a University of Iowa study. I just want to give you a couple of measures here. Property tax value on this Wisconsin, under this Iowa, was 14.9 to 20%, and where the most people that were affected by this property was between 1 and 3 miles from the mine. So you take your corner and you walk down 3 miles and you see yourself on that map, that will affect you. Granted, the people that are closer to the mine will have a greater percentage in their property tax, but there's more of us in that 3-mile radius. And that's something that I want you all to look at. Okay?
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks. Anybody else? comments, concerns, questions? I think the hand back here was first.
I'm Julie Johnswood. I live at 10556 Patton Drive, but my parents live on MacArthur Drive. And I'm going to represent my parents here tonight, too. Everybody says, you know, that the reason some people don't even come to this is, one, my parents are good friends with Roger Hansen, who started the sale of this. And that's a family friendship, a township friendship that they've all grown through. And so they're just not going to put their judgment in on this, even though it's going to affect them greatly. They're 1.5 mile down, you know, the road. And as she was saying, it's actually, if you're within a mile, it's a 30% decrease in taxes in your tax value or your fair assessment. 2 to 3 miles is 20, and then it goes down from there. So on that, then is the town of Rock going to go back and reassess everybody in that area and use those decreased tax values?
The zoning commissioners shaking his head yes.
No, I agree with what she's saying.
I mean, because then you're willing to give up money there.
As somebody that
Over
already
the next
feels he's
15 years.
overtaxed in this township,
And they're going to point that out. So you're going to lose money there in tax revenue. There's no way you can't lose money. If your values decrease, you have to adjust to just like you adjust to market, to anything, to the square footage, you have to adjust to the value of the land also and the decrease of the value.
There are plenty of sample language available from the 3 different townships I mentioned that identify preservation of property value. And that will most certainly be a part of the recommendation as well. But there was a question back here.
Vicky Schminsard. I own property at 9646 Front B. And are there limits on how far they can go out, the companies? Or if they keep expanding and they want your property, can they take that by eminent domain?
No, I'm familiar with eminent domain. I've been in the public sector for almost 40 years. Just based on my experience, eminent domain is typically a tool by municipalities,
Okay.
towns, villages, or cities that can acquire property. But I don't believe I can recall any case where, because a private developer wanted to come in and do something there, that the town or the village or the city said, we're going to eminent domain. I don't know that. That's I got to say it's an assumption. I don't believe, maybe Dave and maybe Mr. Wallace can comment on that, but I don't believe eminent domain is something that can be applied to that scenario.
I believe eminent domain is for by the government, the individual or company cannot claim eminent domain.
Correct, that's why I said town, a village, or a some other form of municipality, a city, they may have that eminent domain tool available to them to, for example, put in a road across somebody's property who doesn't want a road across their property because of the greater good for the community, or what other specific parameters in which they can apply the eminent domain rule to.
Have you went to any of these places who have reclaimed the land to look at it and talk to the people who live there and see what their opinions are?
Well, as far as reclamation, like Mr. Bensky said, that the Maryland mine is very close to being fully reclaimed, but they're not there yet. We did have a conversation, as Liz mentioned, of a couple of homeowners. I did ask for a list of homeowners, their addresses, their telephone numbers. I haven't got the telephone numbers yet. Actually, I think there was a couple. There were a couple of telephone that Cooley Frac Sand did provide. They also provided some data about what their wells look like, and I don't think we have all of those. There were only 5 pieces of property. One was a commercial, and there were 4 residences. So we don't have real conclusive evidence. And just to be aware of the fact that it's my understanding, our understanding as a committee, that was the first mine in the state of Wisconsin that Cooley Frac Sand actually ran. And I know the DNR person, when I asked the question about were there any previous permit violations or any type of violations that the DNR may have had to address with them, and she said, she doesn't believe there has. She couldn't find any, or there wasn't any. And then she made a point that said that wasn't a fly-by-night operation, and I didn't really reference that, or I didn't use that phrase, but she felt it important to say this isn't a fly-by-night organization, and I have that in an email. Beyond that, other than research online and research that other people have been providing, either the Concerned Citizens Group or our own research, no. Have we driven around and looked at reclaimed mines? I personally have not. I don't think anybody else on the committee has as well. And I don't think anybody on the board has, or the commission. Harry?
I've actually been involved in reseeding and reclamation through my own business. For my own business, for the mine over here, the completion mine. On the first pits dug, I was brought in to take the rocks off and prep that for seeding and seed it, lay down erosion mat, and they mow that to this day. I mean, somebody goes in there and keeps that maintained yet, even though they're in bankruptcy, so.
And that's a barrel pit, not a frac sand mining processing plant?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Ma'am, any other question? Okay.
If I can recall, the reclaimed area that they had done at Maryland, it looked like a pile of sand with weeds growing.
Well, they weren't done with, to be fair, they weren't done
They
with
were
it.
done with that part of it. He said, I asked him.
That was where they were stockpiling their materials to reclaim the truck.
Yeah, I don't know, and to be fair, I don't know if that was the finished process, if they mentioned that was the finished product, then.
He said he was done with that area.
Okay.
Jimmy, that's what Jimmy told me.
Jimmy, okay.
Jimmy is the guy that's gonna take over Francine's house.
That's their intent.
Yes.
He mentioned to us that he was gonna be living in that house and he's just gonna relocate his job there to here, so. Another question, ma'am?
Yes, in the same way that Francine's no longer live there, what's going to happen to the other properties down MacArthur as they have to look at the big, the big mound that keep the water in, and right next to them, and Cooley says, well, we'll buy your place for what you paid for it. We'll buy your place, we'll buy your place. What's going to keep that from causing the mine to expand into something we could never have imagined?
Good question, can't answer. Jeff?
I believe they would have to re-ask for conditions and put up a new thing to establish a new mine, other than what's already been established now. They'd have to ask them to move on, go further, to mine more than what they already claimed in their reclamation.
I think that's a fair assumption, but I think it's also a legal question.
Yeah.
That I don't think anybody here is qualified to answer. I'm not. Any other questions?
Hello, I'm Eric Nelson, 11511 Eisenhower Drive. I have a question. When the township came up with the original language, how was it communicated where everyone had an input? Do you remember? Was it a postcard?
You mean you come up with the zoning itself?
Yeah.
I don't know, Harry may be able to answer more, but it was in the mail. We got it in the mail and filled out a survey, but I don't remember that.
Really, if he can answer the question for you, I would start with maybe David Vensky here, being that he's been around the zoning longer than anybody else has.
Like the Schumacher said that they got a postcard. Someone I don't know.
There was, if I remember correctly, there was a committee appointed, and they kind of did basically like we're doing here. We had the meetings, we went by example zoning from other townships, and went through that whole process. Now, I don't know how many, I think sometimes the residents in the town of Rock have gotten mixed up to some extent, because there's probably at least 4 or 5 revisions of the original zoning. And I mean, a case in point, when the zoning came out, there was 5-acre lots you could have, or was minimum, or was it 2 acres, and then they had to go to 5 acres. Changes like that took place. Different things that came up.
But there was a big survey about the climate and health that everyone had input on, the whole township.
township as far as additions and houses in Wood County. And since that time, land values, whatever, you're not getting the population growth that we were getting 15, 20 years ago. Just listening here, a lot of you have said, well, we've been out here 25 years, we've been out here 20 years, 26 years. That's about the time when there was a lot of building in the town of Rock. And then, when you talk about zoning, there's a lot of property that's open and clear to build a house, but they changed the zoning from being 4 houses per mile to 4 houses, it was 4 houses per mile, and now they changed it because somebody had a 40-acre parcel along in and divided it up and put 4 houses on that 40 acres. Now the other property owners cannot build, theoretically. We had to change the zoning for it, basically to solve that problem. And so, I mean, I'm sure Harry has run into instances similar to that, but zoning has been around since, I'm going to say, the early 70s. And there's probably 5 or 6 different complete zoning books floating around the township. And yeah, they got a name on them, but, or a date on them, but a lot of times the dates aren't always looked at.
There's been 4 or 5 revisions since 1989, actually. So there's probably more than that.
Well, it could be. I don't, you know, I was not involved with the zoning, that started.
Because it was shared with me that something came to the box where people wrote down that they wanted to keep it agricultural, rural.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So that went to every person who residents in our
And it was kind of, you know, you had the zoning commissioner, and you had his zoning committee, and then you had the appeals committee, then you had the town board. Now, I'm not sure if that structure is the same now, but at that point in time, those of us that were on the appeal committee, we, amongst ourselves, without going over the line, and we decided that the south end of the township, which was basically forest land, and would probably never be farmland, we could be a little bit more lenient as far as putting another house onto that land.
But the voice came from the people for the overall vision.
Right.
And then it was implemented, politically.
Right.
So, here we're at this time where there's another type of land use being talked about. Might be time to consider reaching out again to the entire township. Every mailbox, by putting something in, so, people can check off what they feel. It'd be anonymous because you only get one postcard, and it would be very representational. Something to consider, beyond this conditional use permit, because my understanding is the lawyer is being proposed for the modifications, not to fight. It's not a protracted battle. It's just asking for modifications. So, we can have our health, our safety, the things that the committee that you guys are putting together considered, but done in such a way that it's at the proper level, said with the proper terminology, so it's taken seriously, which it is. And I have some economic things, and Mr. Bensky, that's your purview. I'm looking at a diminished nest egg. My wife and I, that's our major investment, is our property, our home. And that's other people's thing as well. That's also later on when we actually have to move because we're too old to stay here. That means our nest egg won't be as large for our last care, because that's just how life is. So please take a look at that data, the woman with the peach covered top. Julie, please ask Julie for that information for the distance from the mine, because that has big impact on my family.
Statistics available for real estate all the way through that, any type of threat, and whether it's frac sanding to any type of mine, it affects the property next to you. I mean, would you buy a house that had a frac sand company next to you? Or
Exactly.
I mean, this is common sense. It's not like, oh, wow, that's surprising. It's a 30% though,
Yeah,
within.
But the facts are there.
Yeah, I mean,
Just to make
it's
sure we're
proven.
clear.
And that's exactly, as he's saying, you're looking at what the frac sand company is going to give you, but you also then have to go back and reevaluate these properties as property taxes.
Right, because that was my next point, is there's the loss of the taxes from my property value that will have to be picked up by the rest of the township. And that's a hardship on them. You know, because my ability to contribute has been severely diminished, on top of all these potential health things that would come to my family. And then with the park, it was brought up to have a bonded fund for park maintenance. It's really important that that gets written down so it's there, because otherwise, again, the taxpayers are on the hook, again, for that. And the idea that there's the loss of the taxes because it's now, it's
You
now.
can hold the side conversations down, please.
Now it's in the public trust, as opposed to, contributing tax money as well. And that's not only just for that year, it's for all time forward. So it's a really big amount of potential tax revenue that is being taken upon and spread out through the entire township. I mean, for all of time. So, thank you, Mr. Bensky, if you could address those things, because those are pocketbook issues, not only for my family, but for all the families.
Okay, I think there was a question up here, there was a comment that I missed.
I was just going to confirm when he said, okay, my name is Dorothy Dunbauer, and 8402 comes from me, to confirm that we've been in Lindsay for 49 years, and we did get that survey, and it was a letter in the mail that everybody got that had all these different questions. Do you prefer to have more people coming per mile to be building, and all these different additional questions? And again, we wanted it to be peaceful, quiet, nature, no big companies moving in, and it's been that way.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
the
So a recommendation for, because it's about SAC, the Town of Rock Sand Mine Impact Assessment Committee. Well, has anyone asked the full township? Because you're looking at the impact of a sand mine. The township kind of wants, I would think, buy-in, because these are pocketbook issues for everybody.
I will, just to reinforce maybe the point that's already made, looking specifically at the zoning ordinance, I mentioned earlier secondary conservation areas. And by definition, this area appears to be that because of the following. Included in this category is prime agricultural soils when in blocks of 5 acres or more, and where the soils coincide with the crop fields, meadows, and pastures. Other lands included are where slopes exceed 20%. And then specifically, to your point, and the point being made here, and others have made as well, residents in the town identified the natural environment as the primary reason for living here. It's in the specific the zoning ordinance itself. These could include woodlands, other meadows, historic and cultural elements, and scenic view sheds and road corridors. So again, secondary conservation areas is addressed here, and that site appears to be or meet the definition of that. Harry, you have a question for you, or a comment?
First of all, to attempt to answer your initial question, I have those questionnaires that you speak of. They are public record and are available upon request for viewing. If somebody wants to give me a call, I'll take you back. In fact, Jim, I'd take you back there tonight, and hand them over to you as long as we get them back. If that helps you out.
Can I just make a comment about that? I think specifically, the way I maybe interpreted it, and I apologize if I'm incorrect, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it really speaks to, we got another opportunity here. to really identify, and is the town board willing to put out some type of survey like that? So we get this one, this potentially precedent-setting conditional use permit for this specific industry correct in the town of Rock.
Correct.
So I think it would behoove, it would be a good idea to perhaps do that again, and I'm not sure whether that comes from a recommendation by the zoning commission or the zoning commissioner or the planning commission, I guess is what it's actually referred to in here. Can we make that recommendation Thursday night that the town board puts out another survey similar to one that they did many years ago to get a collective opinion about this particular issue?
Well, I don't think that the idea came from me, so I'd like to see it come from you
Oh, no, I'm
as
not-
a presentation.
Not putting
You
on
know.
a spot.
No, I just think that it's something that, you know, you guys were guided towards by somebody else, and you should ask for that. And I certainly don't discourage you from asking for such information or the possibility of questionnaire for the township. I don't know how much water it's gonna hold, because this is a current issue. This is like, okay, I get a drunk driving ticket, and I'm asking the cop to wait to write me the ticket until I can change the law. Okay?
But it could have benefits for further.
You can't do that though, you gotta stay within the law, that's all I'm saying.
For the next time around, when we talk
Exactly,
about.
I don't ever
zoning.
wanna do this again, to tell you the truth. I mean, if you
Yeah.
guys wanna try
Either.
to stop this afterwards, fine.
I recognize, Jeff, I'm gonna go here, then I'll go there, okay?
Well, look, can I just finish up? here?
After you, yeah.
Okay, definitely, you know, you're looking at diminished property values, but I haven't heard anybody say, let's let Cooley sell the land as lakefront property. And, geez, if you stuck 25 houses around that lake, what would that do to our tax roll?
Good point.
We don't want 25,000.
Why not?
We can't have more than 25 houses a mile. I don't know where those 25 houses are from.
Well, I'm just, well,
Understand what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because we already have.
everybody's worried about their taxes. If you had the opportunity, I mean, do we want to start putting roads in and start putting extra roads in and stub roads? Mr. Helgerson wants to put his own road in for another house, and it's almost impossible for him to do that because of our zoning. But if we could add 25 houses to the township, I'm hoping that would take some of the burden off the taxpayers. But, you know, I haven't heard anybody say anything about just letting Cooley sell the land as lakefront property. What would that be worth? That'd be worth a lot of money.
Yeah, we have to get,
Well,
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but we have to get there. I think another point.
I just found the
Yeah.
paperwork in the folder from the Schumachers. It was June 2nd, 1988. And it has like preserve the prime agricultural land that is present in the town of Rock, projected through the use of open space development standards, promote residential development that utilizes land inappropriate for agricultural uses, become more involved in the Wisconsin Farmland Preservation Programs to encourage farmers to enroll their prime lands into the program, develop zoning and subdivision ordinances that protect agricultural practices by providing appropriate separate uses within agricultural areas. And it goes on. So, it was just interesting, you know, she brought it up in side comment, I didn't get a chance to read it until just now. And it seems like our forefathers and foreparents here did a really excellent job making this place a quality place to live. It's kept you here, it's brought you here. And what we're asking is for this quality to be maintained, and we need some help doing it. So that's what we need advice for.
I am curious that property, I drive past the agricultural part of it quite often. What agricultural use has it been over the last 10 years? Grazing, is it grazing land or hay or crops? It is crops.
Row crop.
How much of that crop? How much of the acreage is crop?
Meisner's rented from Cargill.
Mm-hmm.
90 acres.
Okay, that's good.
And the rest was a tree farm. A lot of the rest was a tree
That
farm.
was Sheldon's farm.
Basically, that was,
Okay.
This is why I did we decided to do this map. If you just look at where the yellow dots are. It's all right here. There's hardly anybody down here. And I don't know how we can spread the word. Because this is going to affect our township. It's our main thoroughfare to the little town, the general store, our Lindsay Pub and Grub. So isn't this interesting, the people that are so focused?
Well, I think it also speaks to, there's quite a few other people on, dots on there as well. I think it's not, the good point I think that makes is that's not just immediately around that property. It's well beyond that property that there's concerned. Jeff, you got a point, you got a question.
I just want to bring up that right now we're all for or against it. Open-minded, I'm open-minded yet, about a frac sand. But when you talk about redoing the zoning, think broader than a frac sand. How about a distribution center? We're close to Highway 10.
Landfill.
Landfill.
Yeah.
Think broader. Your minds are, when you get to that point, you're narrow-minded onto the sand, but when you redo the zoning, or you push to redo the zoning, think bigger, think outside the box. When our people did, our forefathers, like you said, or past people, wrote those zoning, it was a quarry that they were thinking about. Frac sand was never even dreamed of at that time. When what we're dealing with, what's written in our zoning now. So when you go to redo it, think outside of the box. What potential is out there in today's world, because when they did that, frac sand mining was never even dreamt of. The biggest issue would have been a large rock quarry or a 2,000 head dairy farm. They're thinking of outside of the box at that time.
Okay, good point. I think we have time for two more points. It's after 9 o'clock. We're trying to get to a 2-hour meeting time, but I'll take 2 more comments.
I just had one comment, and Jeff will know this real well. You talking about a landfill. What was that, 20, 25 years ago, they talked about a landfill across from where you presently live?
Yeah.
So that's already been, kind of explored at one time.
Good. One more comment, concern, question. Yeah.
I know you're about to end this. This is totally unrelated, but I just wanted to say, since everybody here looks close, that there have been robberies on V, and my neighbor has had people in her yard twice this week, so just beware. And it has something to do with the little white compact car. So just keep your eyes open.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll end the public comment section. At this point, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion and a second. Vensky, Varsho. Any discussion? Hopefully not. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming, and please contact your board member and express your opinion, because apparently